This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Pei, and we pick it up on the top of Pei Amid Aleph, a new Mishnah. Hasoicher es hapara lachroish bahar. Someone rents an animal, a cow, to plow in the mountain, but then v'charash bebika, he takes it and he plows in the bika in the valley. Im nishmar kankan, if the kankan breaks, he is potter. What's the kankan? So the kankan is the collar or the coulter. One of the utensils, one of the items that the animal is connected to help it plow. So if it breaks, you're potter. Bibika v'charish bahar, then im nishmar kankan chayiv. What's the reason? So Rashi speaks out the obvious reason on the last wide line. Shaharim kashim lachroish eslayim sham. The mountains are more difficult to plow because there are rocks there, and therefore, if you went to a more difficult area and it caused something to break, so you're a chayiv. Case number 2 in the Mishnah, ladash b'kintini is v'dash b'tvuah. If you rented an animal to thresh beans and you did grains, potter, because it's easier. Ladash b'tvuah. And again, over here we're talking about Rashi says imechlika, if the animal slips. But ladash b'tvuah v'dash b'kintini is chayiv. Why? Mimnei sha'kinyes machlekes. Because beans are more slippery. So you went and you took the animal to a more slippery area and it slipped. Therefore, you are chayiv. Says the Gemara, Heicha d'lo shani ba man mishalim, where the renter did not change, and as Rashi says, ve'ein lebala para l'tvaya loy klum, and there's no claim. Ve'elu shaya bepulasei amanik va'ichez yachat schirim haya'izim em poishea b'shviras hakankan. So man mishale, the renter did not change anything. Therefore, there's no reason why the owner of the cow could claim anything. But again, the item broke. So the question is, man mishale, who pays for the damage? So says the Gemara, it's a machlekes. Amar Rababa, says Rababa, Dinakid Parsha Mishalim. The one that is holding on to the goad pays. Rav Sheshes Brid Rav Idi Amar, Dinakat Mana Mishalim. The one that holds on to the coulter pays. It says the Gemara, we have two different opinions. Who is the one that's obligated to pay in a regular case where you did what you're supposed to do and then there was damage? The Hilchasa says the Gemara Dinakat Mana Mishalim. So, part number 1, but if the place has a lot of rocks and whatnot, then Tarvayu Mishalmim, then they both have to pay. And the simple understanding over here is, as Rashi points out in the Maschil Mishalem, Shehemek Yoiser Midai Ba'aretz. What's going on over here is you rent a cow, and now there's damage. The Gemara is assuming right now that the damage was caused by your workers. It's not that you did what you were supposed to do and then there was damage, because then you're a renter, you'd be potter. But the case the Gemara is assuming is that the guy pushed down too hard on the goad, the guy pushed down too hard on the other implement to plow, and therefore says the Gemara in a scenario in which no one did anything wrong, still there is he who would have to pay one of the two workers. Amar Rav Yochanan, says Rav Yochanan, Hamoicher par lachaveiroi, someone sells a cow to his friend, and he tells him at the time of the sale, this cow gores, Nishchanisi, this cow bites, Batonisi, this cow kicks, Ravsanisi, this cow lies down and observes and breaks them. And in reality, it only had one of the mumim, meaning the owner gave a whole list of issues. The cow gores, bites, kicks, the whole 9 yards. And then the cow only had one issue. Usnafai bina mumim. And when the seller listed all the issues, that one issue was listed within other non-issues. What's the halacha? I raise a mekach tois. Says the Gemara, the sale is in error and the buyer could void the sale simply because you hear 20 things the animal has wrong and 19 of them aren't true, so you don't rely upon even the one that is true. And therefore the buyer could say mekach tois and demand back his money. Mum zeh, mum umamacher. But let's say the seller said it has this problem and that problem. And in reality, it only had one. Ein zeh mekach tois. And it's not a mekach tois. Again, the mekach tois that we're discussing is because he lumped it all together. If you look at Rashi, Rashi explains, the purchaser realized with other mumim she'ina, they weren't there. And therefore he thought he's lying about all of them. Therefore, he thinks, you know why the seller is saying this? He just doesn't want me to ever complain about anything. But really, there's no problem. So therefore, to mekach tois when there is actually an issue. But if he says there's one problem and another problem, and lamaisa, one of them he has, there's no mekach tois. Why not? He said two things you should have checked. Says the Gemara, Tanya Namiyachi, we have a brayso proving this point. Says the seller, the shivcha is a shaita, she's insane, nechbes, she's an epileptic, mishuemesi, she's disturbed. And in reality, she only had one issue, but the seller, listed with everything else, harei zeh mekach tois. Momzeu mamacher ein zeh mekach tois. Amr le Rav Acha, berei the Rav le Rav Ashi, hayba kol ha'mumin halalu mahu. What if in Lamaisa, the animal or the shivcha had all of the mumin? Amr le Rav Mordechai le Rav Ashi, achamrin v'shei the Rava, hayba kol ha'mumin halalu ein zeh mekach tois. Meaning, because then there's no taina to the buyer that he says, oh, I realized it didn't have one, I thought it didn't have the other, because Lamaisa, it had all of the mumin. We continue with the second Mishnah on the bottom half of Pei Amud Aleph. You rent a donkey to bring wheat, and you bring in it barley. Chayiv. The renter is chayiv. Why? Rashi, at the end of the narrow light, says, because it's a larger load when you put on barley. Therefore, you're chayiv. Tvua v'avila teven, you rented to put on it tvua grain, and you put on it teven, you put on an excessive straw. Chayiv again. And here the Mishnah explains, because the bulk, the excess barley, the excess straw, is hard on the animal. But what if you put the same quantity? I rented it to put a letach of wheat, and I put a letach, but it was barley. Then I'm potter. What's considered adding on? Then you're going to be chayiv. Says the Gemara, Itmar Abayomar. Kasha kimasoitinan, Rav Amar kasha limasoitinan. Amachloikes Abaye and Rava. What was the reason that you're chayiv when you put on the other item, which is a larger load? The Mishnah said kasha kimasoi. The Gemara explains that that is imachloikes Abaye and Rava, whether it is a kasha kimasoi. Says Abaye, it's hard like a load. Says Rava, it's hard to load, it's hard to carry. Explains the Gemara. Abaye Amar Kasha Kimasoi, it's hard like a load. Tinan Nafcha Ki Tikla. Excuse me, Abaye Amar Kasha Kimasoi Tinan Nafcha Ti Tikla. The reason is that bulk, when you put on the barley or you put on the straw, it's more bulky and therefore it's difficult to the animal, ki tikla, like putting on an extra load. V'imoisiv shleisha kavim chayiv, and therefore if you add on 3 kav, he's chayiv. Rav Amar, and in contrast we'll understand better, kasha limasai, it's difficult to carry tinan. Tikla, it's difficult to carry tikla ki tikla, because a heavier load is the weight of a normal load. And the bulk is the Tosefes. So what precisely is this machlokes? According to Rava, the only time he's going to be chayiv is if he added on enough that there's the equal weight to the other item and more. Whereas according to Abaye, that's not true. According to Abaye, it's going to be a lower amount. Take one moment to look at the Rashi. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Rashi. The Rashbams, of course, towards the wide lines. On the fourth line, says the Rashbam, Navka nifcha kitikla, which is the sheet of Abaye. Nafach koshe kimishkol. Bulk is like weight. Ha'il v'nifcha shava rei kimishkal shava. Whereas Rava said koshe limasoi and mashava koivir asoirin lekoivir achitik which Yosef saw shleima leletach. It's the same weight. Still, it's more baggage. V'roiva nafach. It's a more bulky item, the barley and the wheat. And therefore, even if it's going to be the same amount, it's going to be chayiv. So says the Gemara Tanan, let's ask a kasha on Rava, 12 lines on the bottom. Lavi letach itim, avi letach sayrim potter. The Mishnah said clearly, if you do the same amount, you're potter. V'im hoisiv al masoi, then you're chayiv. My love, is it not referring to that? What does it mean? You're hoisiv al masoi, says the Gemara, shloishes kabin. Like Abaye loisa. I've look at any v'kami yisal masay yechayiv. So chosam mishum rameir. So like Abaye shkam lechamar. Like Abaye. Hachi Kamar explains the Gemara. Hey, chotoloshani chitin v'vi chitin soirin v'vi soirin. Says the Gemara. This is how you can explain the Mishnah according to Rava. Hey, chotoloshani, where he did not change chitin avi chitin. He said he's going to bring wheat and he brought wheat. Soirin, v'vi soirin. He said he's going to bring barley and he brought barley. Kama yozama chayv. At what point, if you brought the right item, is it considered too much? On that, so according to Rava, it's almost like a chasure mechsera. According to Rava, we have to add in that how much, when you're doing the same item, how much is it going to be considered an excess? Tashima. Another kasha on the last line of Peyamid Aleph. Lavi letachitin vehavi sheish esrei seoirin. And he brought 16 sav barley as we turn over to Peyamid Beis chayiv hashlashes kabin. But which the obvious diak is, if you brought only 3 kav, then you're going to be potter. So this is a kasha on, of course, Abaye. Because Abaye said the quantity to be chayiv is going to be 3 kav. But we see for this brayso that that's not true. Tergama Abaye in the second line, b'mechiksa, referring to a leveled load. And that's the reason why it will be this larger amount. Tanu Rabbanan continues the Gemara. Now we're just going to discuss other types of loads. At what point it's called an excess. Kav lekatov, an extra kav for a porter. Adriv la'ariva, a deriv for a small boat. Kor lisfina, kor for a medium-sized boat. Shleishes kurim, the borni gedayla. 3 kor for a large boat. Amar Mari asks the Gemara, kav lekatov, emis alomatzi. If the case is that he's not able to carry it, bardasu. He's a person. We're talking about a porter, so he carries things on his own. L'shadye. Therefore, he should have taken it off. Why is the one that hired him chayiv? He should have realized he can't carry such a load, and he should never have taken it. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye explains Abaye. The case is where he picked it up, and right away it was too heavy. He didn't have the chance to put it down. Right away, it weighed him down. Rava Amar, afilu teim b'shleichav tel altar. No, it wasn't right away. And still, like tzricha ella la agra yisera. You know why he did it? Cause he thought he's gonna make a little bit more money, and then it ended up damaging him. Rav Ashi Amar, a third teretz, husavar chol shasu denakale. He thought that he just was feeling weak, and that's why he didn't put down the baggage until it actually caused him damage. Finally, Korlis Vina says, Kur in the burning Gedela Amar Abba Shami. No, Stam Svinais are Bas Tilton Kurin. An average boat is a Tilton Kurin 30 kur. Lamainaf Kamina. Lamekach Chomenkra, as we see so many times. So we're seeing that the Gemara now is extending. We started with the dinim of what's the normal loads and baggages of camels and other animals. The Gemara now says similarly will apply to other modes of transportation, and at what point it's considered excess, and the one who hired him would be chayiv. Says the Mishnah number 3 of the day. Kol ha'omdim shaymer sacharein. An uman, a craftsman, is a shaymer sachar. He's considered a hired worker. But then once the craftsman says, take your item, bahavi mois, I'm finished. Take the item and pay me, then shaymer chinam. Then if you didn't pick it up for a little bit amount of time, and it's sitting in the craftsman's house, at that point he's no longer considered a shomer sachar. At that point he's considered a shomer chinam. Continues the Mishnah. Shamar li v'ashmer lecha. If someone says, you watch for me and I'll watch for you, shomer sachar, that's called getting paid. Shamar li v'amar le. If someone asks someone, watch for me, v'amar le, and he responds, hanach lifanai, put it down in front of me. Shomer chinam, says the Gemara, that's the terminology that, yeah, okay, I'll watch it, but doesn't mean he's getting paid. Halveu ala mashkin, shomer sachar. Someone lends money and the other guy gives a mashkin. The one that now is watching the mashkin, the lender, the malveh, is called a shomer sachar on the mashkin. Rav Yehuda Omer halveu ma'is, shomer chinam. Says Rav Yehuda, no, if it was money, then he's a shomer chinam. Halveu peira, he said he's a shomer sachar. Abashal Leimer concludes the Mishnah, Rashi Adam lahascher mashkana shalani liyos paisek v'oilech alav neshu kameshav aveda. One is allowed to rent out the mashkin. If I lend someone $100 and he gives me a mashkin, I can take that mashkin and rent it to others, because then the money that comes in, I'll be able to utilize for that guy to pay back my loan. And therefore, it's Kemeshav Aveda. It's like I'm returning a lost item. I'm helping out the ani. Says the Gemara, Lema Masnisan. Let us suggest that this Mishnah is Deloi Kirebi Meir. It's not like Rebbe Meir. Titani, we learned in a Brisa. How does a renter pay? Rabbi Meir Amar Kishemer Chinam, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Kishemer Sachar. So our Mishnah seemingly said Shomer Sachar, not like Rameir. Answers the Gemara, Filu Tamer Rameir. You can even explain the Mishnah according to Rameir. By he another Gashave Kuli Alma Vager Leila Didei. There is benefit. The benefit in the fact that the owner left all other craftsmen and hired this guy. Have Eluyei Shomer Sachar. Meaning, in the case of a soicher, that's when Rameir said it gets the din of a shomer chinam. But the case of a uman will be different, because in uman I'm going to you and I'm hiring you, so therefore you're getting an added benefit that I came to you, and therefore it's called a shomer sachar. Ask the Gemara, so why don't we say the same thing by a renter? The fact that I rented you the car, so you should be called a shomer sachar. You got benefit that I was willing to give it to you. Says the Gemara, you're right. You can say the Mishnah is Rameir b'yanad kayavik lei tvei porta aviolei shomer sachar. So says the Gemara, nubshat. No, the reason why the Mishnah can be Rameir, because a little hanad kavle tvei porta, because he gives him a little bit more. You hire someone to do a job, you give him an extra $1. So that extra $1 determines that he's like a shomer sachar. Says Gemara, what do you mean? But in Rameir's case as well. So Echanami Milay Askinon, to come actually like tvei porta, you also give him a little bit more. Elafilu teima Rameir. Says the Gemara Pshat number 3. You know how you can say Rameir fits with our Mishnah, b'yan other tafas leya agrei debai lebai lemeal lemeafik azuzei havi alei shomer sachar. You can say the reason why Rameir could be our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah particularly, in the case of the uman, he's called the shomer sachar. Why? Because the benefit that the uman tafas leya agrei withholds the item until he gets the money. So he doesn't need to go and borrow money. Because he knows he's going to pay him for the item. That determines he's a shomer sachar. Ema. Rabbi Ravua switched it around and learned. Meaning, the brisa that we quoted, Rabbi Ravua said we got the names wrong. Sercher Kate said Mishalem, Rameir Omer, Kishaymer Sachar. So now the Mishnah can feel like Rameir, Rav Yehuda Omer, Kishaymer. Of course, and the Mishnah would not be like Rav Yehuda, but at least it is like Rameir, which always is better because Tam Mishnah is Rameir. Pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.